Frank Fritz, the liked co-host of American Pickers, left this world on September 30, 2024, on the age of 60. But it wasn't simply his unexpected passing that stirred emotions among his family and friends. It turned into the incredible fortune he left in the back of, a fortune that might now not best redefine how his circle of relatives noticed him, however additionally sparked tears, tensions, and perhaps a few surprises. But permits rewind the tape a touch. Before we dive into the thousands and thousands left in his wake, let's discover the final moments of a person who lived life on the road, picking through America's forgotten treasures, handiest to grow to be one himself. It became no secret that Frank's fitness were at the decline in the years leading up to his death. He'd suffered a stroke in 2022, and complications from that cerebral infarction might finally lead to his passing 2 years later. According to TMZ, the demise certificate stated the motive as past due sequel of cerebral infarction, a medical way of saying that the stroke had left lasting harm that his frame could not get over. But that wasn't all. Frank turned into also struggling with aortic stenosis, a situation that makes it tough for blood to waft nicely via the coronary heart. It became a double blow, or even the most powerful pickers cannot haggle with destiny. But here's where it receives even extra human. Despite the fitness problems and private struggles, Frank's tale wasn't just about decline. It became approximately reconciliation, especially together with his longtime pal and co-host, Mike Wolf. They were thick as thieves for the reason that Center College, bonding over a shared love of choosing and developing up without their fathers. But reputation and fortune, they have a way of putting cracks in even the most powerful friendships. By 2021, their relationship had hit rock backside. Frank, in an interview with The Sun, wasn't shy approximately airing the dirty laundry. He accused Mike of turning American Pickers into a one-guy show, comparing their dynamic to that of Steven Tyler and the rest of Aerosmith. The show is tilted closer to him 1000%, Frank said. It's like you've got Aerosmith, and there may be Steven Tyler. I found my spot, I'm 2D, and he is primary at the display. Ouch. But right here's the twist no one noticed coming. After Frank's stroke in 2022, the two began to fix their damaged friendship. By 2023, they were speak me once more, and Mike wasn't about to allow his buddy go without making things proper. I got the decision that he wasn't doing nicely, Mike advised humans. I just experienced blessed that I was able to get there. Mike described those very last moments with a tenderness that would soften even the hardest hearts. I turned into there for approximately an hour before he exceeded, and I turned into holding his hand and rubbing his chest while he took his last breath. I took my arms and I closed his eyes. Let that sink in for a moment. Two men who had shared extra miles than most married couples, whose friendship had been examined by using repute, fortune, and personal demons, observed closure within the quietest, maximum intimate manner feasible. Mike advised Frank he cherished him. He wasn't mad anymore, and when Frank was struggling to cling on, Mike whispered, "Just go locate your mom. Go discover her proper now." In that second, it wasn't about antiques, TV scores, or petty feuds. It turned into about friends. Finding peace earlier than the final curtain fell. But Frank Fritz wasn't only a man with a heartwarming tale. He was a person who turned a childhood hobby into a multi-million-dollar empire. Born in Davenport, Iowa, Frank had been a collector from the start. Rocks, beer cans, you name it. But it wasn't until his days as a fire inspector, wherein he spent 25 years inspecting hearth safety gadget, that he found out he should flip his ardor for locating rare gadgets right into a profession. By the time American Pickers premiered on the History Channel in 2010, Frank changed into already a pro picker. Alongside Mike Wolf and Danielle Colby, Frank crisscrossed the United States of America in search of hidden treasures tucked away in barns, garages, and junkyards. The display speedy became a hit, resonating with viewers who loved the fun of discovery and the nostalgia of forgotten Americana. Over 22 seasons and 300 episodes, American Pickers failed to just showcase antiques. It showcased Frank's sharp eye and infectious ardor. His knack for spotting cost and what others brushed off as junk grew to become him right into a household call. And it wasn't simply the TV display that covered his wallet. Frank authored books, American Picker's Guide to Picking in 2011, and How to Pick Vintage Motorcycles in 2013. They have been bestsellers that cemented his reputation as an authority inside the world of antiques. And I'll no longer forget about Fritz Fain's, his vintage shop in Savannah, Illinois. This became a thriving enterprise that attracted creditors and lovers from all over. By the time of his dying, Frank's net worth became anticipated at a cool $6 million. That's proper. The man who as soon as scoured junkyards for rusty signs and symptoms and antique bikes had accumulated a fortune that many within the leisure enterprise ought to handiest dream of. But here's the kicker. What happens to all that money? When someone leaves behind a fortune like that, you'd anticipate some circle of relatives individuals to shed tears, not simply from grief, however, from the burden of what has been left in the back of. Frank's passing did not just depart an emotional void, it left an economic legacy that could exchange the lives of his loved ones for all time. But not all tears are created equal. Some were tears of gratitude. Frank's generosity became famous, and those closest to him knew he'd looked after them in his final days. But there had been also tears of remorse, of ignored possibilities to reconcile, of phrases left unsaid. And then, of root, there had been the inevitable tears of hysteria. Because while millions are at stake, even the closest families can locate themselves at odds. But what did Frank's will say? Who stood to inherit his multi-million-dollar estate? Was it family, pals, or perhaps even someone unexpected? Frank had the foresight to document his will in court a year earlier than his demise, on October 23, 2023. While his health had already been on a consistent decline after his 2022 stroke, no person predicted matters to spiral as fast as they did. But Frank wasn't one to leave things to danger, as a minimum now, not whilst it got here to his budget. The U.S. Sun reported that Midwest One Bank, which had been appointed as his conservator following his stroke, become additionally named the executor of his estate. The will itself, sealed tight. Whatever secrets lay inside had been locked away, however one thing become clean. The plans for his $6 million fortune had been formally authorized simply weeks after his demise on October 18, 2024. But allows rewind to the moments leading up to that. When Frank suffered his debilitating stroke in July 2022 at his Iowa farmhouse, it changed into extra than just a health scare. It was a turning factor that shifted the manipulate of his lifestyles from his own hands into the ones of others. His decision-making capacity changed into so impaired that he could not care for his simple wishes. Food, shelter, medical care. It wasn't lengthy before cherished ones filed for conservatorship and guardianship, thrusting Frank right into a felony shape in which his economic and personal affairs were handled by way of others. Midwest One Bank controlled his finances, whilst his longtime buddy, Chris Davis, stepped in as his mother or father, overseeing the whole thing, from his Crohn's disease treatment to his physical remedy appointments. And then there was the matter of his prized possessions. His sprawling series of antiques, antique bikes, and memorabilia that crammed out homes on his belongings like a museum of American nostalgia. The conservatorship papers found out that at the same time as those treasures hadn't been completely inventoried, the plan turned into to hold them largely as they were, with pick-out gadgets used to stock his antique shop, Fritz Fain's, in Savannah, Illinois. But what about his circle of relatives, who had been the people left behind in the wake of Frank's passing? And how did they match into the narrative of his fortune? Here's wherein it gets complicated. Frank, in no way married, notwithstanding rumors that circulated in 2021, approximately him tying the knot together with his longtime girlfriend, Diane. The reality? They had damaged up well before his dying, their courting collapsing underneath the weight of betrayal and heartbreak. In an interview with The Sun in July 2021, Frank found out that he were making plans to marry Diane, even shopping for a new house for them. But at the same time as he became on the road filming American Pickers, he observed she had every other boyfriend again home. It hurt my emotions, my self-esteem, and my entire international, Frank admitted. His reaction became to drown the ache in alcohol, a decision that marked the start of a long and painful struggle with addiction. Diane, for her element, denied Frank's version of events. "It's no longer real, what he's announcing," she advised The Sun. "If he's looking to make me appear like the terrible individual of root I'm going to mention, it's no longer true because it's now not." But whether or not or no longer her aspect of the tale held water, the damage were done. By 2019, the relationship changed into over and Frank become left selecting up the portions of the existence he notion he had discovered. So without a spouse or youngsters, who did Frank take into account family? Friends, it is who. People like Chris Davis, who had become his mother or father after the stroke, and Jerry Gendro, an established friend who spoke openly, approximately Frank's very last months. He felt, actually, surely terrible, Jerry recalled, describing visits to peer Frank inside the nursing home, where one aspect of his body turned into absolutely paralyzed. He might carry his arm up, and it'd just drop. That's gotta be difficult to be definitely bedridden. Frank's frustration became palpable. He couldn't articulate what he wanted to mention, although some days have been better than others. Jerry summed it up in a way that reduced right to the core. "I think Frank ought to have lived a lot longer if the will to live might were there." And then of Path, there was Mike Wolfe, the person who were both Frank's closest friend and at times his bitter rival. Their dating had been a curler coaster, from center faculty friends to co-hosts of one of the History Channel's largest shows, after which to estranged colleagues. But by the point Frank's fitness took a turn for the more severe, they'd located their way return to every different. But for all of the emotional closure, the question remained, did Mike Wolfe stand to inherit any part of Frank's fortune? It's hard to mention. With the needs sealed, the specifics of Frank's estate distribution are shrouded in mystery. What we do know is that Frank's economic legacy was intricately tied to his antique series and his shop, Frank Fritz Fane. His friend Jerry hinted that an auction might be within the works, capitalizing on Frank's fan base to ensure that his treasures discovered houses with people who, without a doubt, appreciated them. "That's what I could do due to his fan base," Jerry said. "I suppose he's going to do honestly, actually properly with an auction." And even as the antique global buzzed with hypothesis, approximately the fate of Frank's series, his own family, both organic and chosen, grappled with the emotional weight of his passing. It wasn't pretty much the money. It changed into about the man who had left an enduring imprint on their lives, whose struggles with addiction and health had formed his very last years and approaches that no quantity of wealth should restore. Frank's war with addiction had been an extended and painful one, stemming no longer simply from heartbreak. However, from years of persistent pain due to Crohn's sickness and a damaged return. The latter required surgical operation in 2019, however restoration was a ways from clean. Frank observed solace in painkillers, but that solace fast spiraled into dependency. By the time he left American Pickers in 2020, his dependency turned into now not a secret among those closest to him. Mike Wolfe, particularly, had witnessed the toll it took on his buddy. He had become addicted to opioids, and that's whilst everything modified. Mike admitted he staged interventions, endorsed rehab, and by no means gave up hope that Frank should locate his way lower back. But just how a whole lot did Frank Fritz's warfare with addiction and fitness problems price him financially and emotionally? The solution might marvel you. At the height of his career, Frank changed into sitting on a comfortable $6 million nest egg. But by the time of his passing, a big slice of that fortune had been funneled instantly into healthcare. We're not speaking about habitual medical doctor visits or the occasional prescription top-off. Frank changed into spending $30,000 a month on medical and in-home care after his stroke in 2022. That's almost $360,000 a 12 months, an incredible parent that even a Truth TV megastar might conflict to maintain for long. This wasn't pretty much sanatorium bills. The prices protected spherical, the clock nursing, physical remedy, and specialized remedies to control not handiest the aftermath of his stroke, but also his ongoing conflict with Crohn's ailment and aortic stenosis. His Iowa farmhouse, as soon as a haven filled with antique motorcycles and uncommon antiques, had to be retrofitted with clinical gadget and wheelchair ramps, turning it into extra of a care facility than a domestic. Nestled in LeClaire, Iowa, Frank's home was as humble and unpretentious as the man himself. Originally purchased in 2010 for $130,000,